The member representing Ajeromi Felodun Federal Constituency of Lagos State, Honorable Kalejaiye Paul, and the Chairman House Committee on Nigerian-French Parliamentary Group has emphasized the need for continuous amendments to the 1999 Constitution to reflect current societal needs and changes. The lawmaker also debated the creation of new states with arguments for and against, including addressing imbalances in political representation and marginalization.
Honorable Kalejaiye PhD. I represent Ajeromi Federal Constituency, the mini Nigeria from Lagos State, the state of Aquatic Splendor. The constitutional amendment you mentioned. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, most of the issues that were raised on the floor of the House just yesterday and even today is about constitutional amendments. You see, it's important that the Constitution must be a dynamic document, a document that speaks to all times and all ages. And so if it's a document that needs to speak to all times and all ages, it must be dynamic. And the dynamism of such constitution is dependent on the lawmakers. How often can the lawmaker tinker with the Constitution? And why must they tinker with the Constitution? And if they have to tinker at all, to what extent can they tinker with the Constitution? So my first reaction is to say that it is purposeful, it is important, and it's, germane that lawmakers, as lawmakers, we must make laws. And in making laws, you don't make fresh laws alone. You also tinker with the existing constitution. Because in any case, when you're making a law, you also realize that some of the laws you are making has references to the existing laws. And that's why when you quote the 1999 Constitution, you say as amended. It means that the Constitution must continuously go through amendment processes. So that was what we saw happening on the floor of the House yesterday and today. Well, you see, if you say creation of states is not necessary, you must have reasons why you think it's not necessary. And if you say if it is necessary, we also have reasons for supporting that it is necessary. Let me tell you first and foremost why creation of states is necessary, particularly as propounded or as justified by some of the proponents of creation of states. Why do we create states? One, you create states for the purpose of, amending the imbalances in the polity. And what do I mean by imbalances in the polity? For instance, the southeastern Nigeria would say that they have the least number of states in the country. And they will allege that you have more states in the northern part of Nigeria as against the southern part of Nigeria. I'm giving you an hypothesis of what goes on. And so those who are now arguing on the basis of, whether one region or one geopolitical zone has more states than others, will argue on the basis of population. Because one of the major indices of creation of states has to do with population. And so some will say that some states are more populated than the other. And yet, those states that are less populated have more states. So it's another argument to the issue of creation of states. Another argument to the issue of creation of states is still about marginalization. Some people argue that because we're least in the number of states that are created, we suffer marginalization. And what kind of marginalization? They say, okay, fine. When they're choosing people, they say one person, okay, they say appointment of ministers. Say minister is one per state of the federation. If my state is less in terms of numbers, it means that I'll have less ministers as compared to those states or those localities that have more states. So to them, it's marginalization. So a lot of things conjure to make up arguments for creation of more states. And if you look at all of those things that I've said, they are not out of place for people to agitate for creation of states. So for me, it's not, they're not wrong to call for creation of more states. And some finally is also to allude to the fact that, okay, we've been in how many states now for how many years? What was the last creation of more states? To say that the population keeps growing in leaps and bounds. So when are we going to have more states? So that, and you also argue to say that creation of states brings more development. To say when you create more states, development comes to those states faster than allowing them to exist in the current state at which they are. So the creation of state brings development, brings progress, it brings, it bridges inequality, it bridges marginalization, it solves a lot of problems. So in that wise, I give it to those who are agitating for creation of state. But then you also will, some school of thought will argue and say that you want more states. How many states as it exists today can survive on its own without federal government intervention? Federal government has to allocate funds to all the federation. And when you look at the internally generated revenue of most of the states, it's not sustainable. So to say that, okay, if the state as it exists today cannot even sustain themselves in terms of the resources that can be generated on their own, and every state will have to depend on the federal system for survival, then you come to say that, oh, no, it's not right. If you ask for more states, it doesn't make sense. Another argument against the creation of states is to say that, look, if you keep on creating more states, you understand what I'm saying, without breed developments as you think, because it is a quantum of allocation of national resources. If the national resources is divided over 36, as we are today, and then the federal capital territory, if you have 100 states, whatever is available to the national government is divided in terms of national resources, is divided among 100 states. So, head of tail, where are we going? So what you used to divide by 36, now have to divide by 100 because you now have more creation. Are those resources going to increase or decrease? So if resources decrease, you understand what I'm saying in terms of what goes on to the states in terms of federal allocation. How much development can you bring to a new state? What will end up happening is that the capital of new states will continue to struggle to grow, while the auxiliary body of the state will continue to groom in poverty, groom in underdevelopment. So these are some of the arguments against creation of, against creation of state. And to also say that, okay, today, one region is marginalized. What happens the next day? If you create more here, you're also creating imbalances, and imbalances will keep on going. So those are issues against, arguments for and against. So you may now want to, on your own opinion as journalists, advise us as lawmakers or advise us as Nigerians to say whether creation of state is desirable or it's not desirable. But my submission is to say that those who are active for creation of states are not senseless. They know what they are doing and they must be encouraged. And those who still feel that you don't need creation of states, the argument can be logical if better considered.
Honorable Kalejaiye also touched on tax reform, advocating for a better system of internal revenue generation and the judicious use of national resources.
Is to advocate for judicious use of national resources. Is to advocate for various states also looking inward for generation of more internal resources. To also advocate for a better system of collection of internally generated revenue. And then finally, to advocate that, well, if we give the new tax reform bill a chance, we may have been able to generate enough funds to the basket. As it is now, what we generate to the basket is not much. And because it's not much, distributions are little. If by the new tax reform bill, when properly passed and assented to by the president, to have expanded the scope of our generation of taxes. And come to think of it, all developed worlds of the developed countries of the world depend on taxes to run their system. UK, for instance, have no much natural resources. They don't have the oil that we have here, but then they generate a lot of resources through taxation.
The lawmaker emphasized the importance of effective tax utilization, particularly in areas like education, infrastructure, and others.
But then the second argument by Nigerians is to say, okay, yes, that you are citing, you are going to cite developed world. But do they do what they do in developed world here? Are those taxes effectively utilized? Because in UK, every tax is effectively utilized. And so people can see the purpose of the taxes they are paying. So that here, we must now ensure that when the tax bill is passed, it's not only the collection mechanism that is well strengthened, it's also to say that we must monitor spending, there must be proper accountability. And that those taxes must be deployed to needed areas of development. They must deploy to education, they must be deployed towards infrastructural development, they must be deployed towards getting rid of poverty in this country. So if we do all of those ones, will soon be used to tax payments.
Additionally, he discussed River State crisis, Governor Fubara's legal options, and the aims of his committee, the Nigerian French Parliamentary Group.
Well, it's been said, and when we were passing the state of emergency proclamation as presented to us by the president, we're not unmindful of the fact that the emergency rule is constitutional. Why is it constitutional? It's constitutional because when there is breakdown of law and order in any particular state or location, if governance is becoming difficult, the national government must intervene. And I ask you, what were we doing when 3 lawmakers were governing 20-something lawmakers? What were we doing when there was no proper budgeting presentation to a state house of assembly? And then money was being spent. Who appropriated those funds? So can 3 lawmakers appropriate those funds? We're also in the country when we have begun to see the brickbats among the various organs of governments. So under such situation, it is important that we must save that state. What the president has done is to save the state of, further anarchy. And some people will want to argue to say there was no anarchy. After all, people were still going about their lawful duties. But don't forget that there were bombing of strategic oil locations. They say it's not bombing. They say it's spillage. They say it's fire outbreak. They say whatever it is. That's the national economy. We are struggling to ensure that we meet our quota for oil production. But then you are bombing oil, all the solutions are going in flames. So under such circumstances, the president may, as it were, proclaim a state of emergency. And in proclaiming the state of emergency, the conditions are well laid out. It's not as if the executive were dissolved or, has to still be, in cooler for now. Even the assembly too has to be in the cooler until when we can. And then what has the House of Representatives done? And of course, ditto the Senate. We did not just pass the emergency rule, hook, line, and sinker. We sat back and said, okay, if there must be emergency rule, it doesn't have to be 6 months definite. We decided that it must not be 6 months definite, because if you say 6 months definite, it means we are not looking at peace returning to that state in less than 6 months. And so we went down and added new parameters. One, it must not be 6 months definite. Two, it will end as soon as the peace returns to that state. Then thirdly, we are not saying peace will not return if there are no mechanism, machineries put in place to restore peace. And what are those mechanisms? We can't leave it to government alone and say they must return peace by putting soldiers or police or guard the place. No, we have said that a national committee, peace committee, be set up to be composed of the National Assembly and composed of eminent Nigerians who will be saddled with the responsibility of making peace between the warring factors. And as soon as that is achieved, then we can lift the state of emergency. We have also denied the president of the fact that he cannot take over our responsibility as lawmakers. That rather than ask that the sole administrator appointed report to the executive, no. We are, as at today, the lawmaking organ of River State. And that so their proposals, budget, everything must pass through the National Assembly for appropriation. So in other words, it's not as if we just sat back and said, oh, Mr. President, oh, congratulations, well done. You have done well. So please continue to declare state of emergency in all part of Nigeria. No. We also had our executive sessions, we had our brainstorming sessions where people critique the entire process and said, look, we will get out of this in less than 6 months. And that's what we have done. It is right to go to court if it so decides. But don't forget that there have been some judgments even before the state of emergency was declared. The Supreme Court has ruled that he must govern with the majority lawmakers, and it's become impossible for him to operate with the majority lawmakers. Today, he say he's taking his bill, his budget there. Say they locked him out. They are not receiving it. So the people are not ready to cooperate. So those are kind of circumstances. If he goes to court to seek that, okay, the state of emergency was declared illegally, then the judges will also look at some other indices to say, okay, fine. If there was no state of emergency, who would you have presented your budget to? Would you have continued to run the state as a single apparatus? Do you understand what I'm saying? There are some hiccups. There are some things that have shown that, governance is becoming difficult in other possible. The France-Nigeria Parliamentary Group, the committee for which I chair, it was inaugurated last week. You're right. And we have started making moves. What are the parliamentary relations group? What are they meant for? They're just to cement our relationship with our foreign countries, to deepen democracy. And how do we deepen democracy? We must have interparliamentary exchanges. We must learn from other clients. They must learn from us. So if you don't have parliamentary relations group, we won't be able to achieve that. And secondly, it's also to support what the executive are doing in terms of harnessing the resources that are available in other clients to see what can be done here. And to also tap for our own constituents. What are the benefits? For instance, they issue scholarships. They do scholarships in some of those foreign countries. And some people benefit. So if we tap into it, we can make some of our constituents to benefit in some exchange programs. We can make, staying or, going to those countries more legitimate than what it used to be before. Most of our, children go there, most of our people go there illegally. We must say, okay, what are the ways by which you can legalize your stay there? You have feasible means of livelihood, you want to go to school, so we will be able to help our constituents. So those are the things that we've done. And what have we done? In a short while since we were inaugurated, we have visited the Minister for Foreign Affairs. We have had discussions with him to familiarize ourselves with international diplomacy, to look at what exists between the French country and Nigeria and tap into it. We have also paid a courtesy call on the ambassador of France, where in his office, we put a courtesy call, and we had exchanges of ideas.
Comfort Olayinka, DCTV News.